Hello there, and as usual, I'm Aaron from Let's Stay Gamers, and welcome. So today I've been messing around trying to build a whole variety of different weaponry, but mainly just experimenting. So I thought I would show you a little bit of experimentation and what I've been working on. So I wanted to show you the initial test for the grappling hook concept. I've hooked up two carts like this, and the idea of this test is to see if the rope will actually loosen and remain at the exact length that I've set it. So we'll give it a quick test and I'll explain it as I'm demonstrating. So we've set the rope to be a little bit further, so you can see how it's not actually coiling up as we push in, but it's actually stretching and coming close together, but the other cart is still not moving. So the grappling hook is going to require this feature to be able to throw it, but if I come back any further here, the cart should be at its maximum distance and we should be able to pull it. But once again, if we move closer, it means that we're keeping this gap between the rope even though the rope is coming closer together, and that's what we're going to need for the grappling hook. So for the first test, I've set up a really simple design. Now I'd like this to work, but I don't think it's going to work due to the rope sort of tension. So we're going to actually hook a secondary rope up to this little hooking point on the cannonball, and the idea would be to fire that cannonball, this unravels, and we can hook over the wall. But I don't think that's going to happen, and we'll have to see why. So we'll have to go for a more complicated design, but let's launch it anyway. Okay, so as you can see there, it looks like the cannonball is actually just pulled around and it's got stuck within that hook. So that's not going to work. Not going to work at all. I don't think there's anything else we can do. There we go. Yeah, it's just, there's too much of a friction, there's too much problem with that. We're going to have to work out another way of launching it. So I've discovered something else about this grappling hook sort of project. If we want it to go further and get over the castle wall, what we're going to actually have to do is probably use a lighter projectile so we can actually pull that rope. So I've got a little bit of a smaller projectile here that we can just drop within the bucket, and you'll just be able to see how far this thing actually flies. So there you go, right over that castle. And it just keeps going off into the distance. So we're probably going to use a small one over a larger projectile, but I'll do some comparison and we'll see what we have to do. So this will be the test with the larger projectile. We'll just see how much distance we can actually get with this one. We'll release that. Okay, we're getting quite a good bit of distance there. I'm not too sure. The lighter projectile might fire it too far. So I've just been experimenting with some different grappling hook sort of tips, and I found out that combining the actual crank wheel with a cannonball and having the loop on the end is probably going to be the perfect combination. Now this one doesn't work very well because it doesn't sit in the actual loop, but this one, if I pick it up, delete it, place it back down there, and I move over here, and I press J to make it a little bit easier to handle, and then I just drop it in like so. You can see how it sits perfectly in the catapult ready for launch, and then all I have to do is hook this up and work out some way of bringing that rope back to a previous thing so I can pull different things over the wall if I wish. Right, so here's my plan of the grappling hook. We've got a very basic little concept going. We've got a number of different hooks actually in this cart here, and we also have the projectile that's going to be firing, and the idea is that this is going to either fire over the wall or into the wall, ideally just over the wall just a little bit, so we can actually hook it up, and then we can hook on to one of these cables and continue to pull something up, maybe a ladder or some sort of siege weaponry. But we'll have to see if this thing actually can fire this many, or else we'll have to put a few less on. So let's actually fire that. Okay, kind of worked. Kind of worked, but the only problem was it separated on impact, so we're gonna have to probably have a look at that again and try to. So that looks like is that the main one, the main hub? Yeah, so maybe a few less of them attached and we'll be able to get that over the wall. So this time we're just going to try it with one. We've got one in the cart there. We're going to pull this forward. We're going to push this as close as to the projectile as possible, and once it's actually up close to this cart, give it a bit of a nudge. We can actually fire this one again with a single cartridge in, and we'll see exactly what happens. So I think this one was going to go considerably further. Okay, that's what we wanted. Oh, but we managed to de-hook itself. We just want the hook to manage to stay in some way. So we'll either have to fire this from a lot further back, or we'll have to add a little bit more weight to the projectile itself. Right, so I've re-hooked the flaming cross of death, and maybe it'll work this time without the boulder underneath. Oh my god! Oh my god, we may have made a grappling hook. We've made a grappling hook! Oh, it's actually hooking onto something. Oh, wow. Wow. Now all we need to do is actually grapple from the right side, and then we can actually have something that works. So this is the concept in Act. It just needs to snag on the wall, but on the other side, and then all we have to do is hook up onto this rope. We can get a winch going, possibly from the bottom, and we could hook ourselves up to it. We'll have to see what we can do. Maybe the flaming one was the best idea. Oh god, right, let's get back to it. No, the catapult's not doing too well. Right, so as I was messing around with these fire things, I've just had an even more crazy idea. Instead of making it into a grappling hook that fires like this and over, that could possibly work, and we'll have to try that later. What about if we made it so it flew them like this? Just watch how they throw like a frisbee. Look how dangerous they are. I mean, look at that. Wow! They're like proper frisbees. And especially, so maybe if we grab one of these sort of hooks, one of these tension ropes, put it on its side, put the actual projectile on a tray, angle it up, and then we flip that, maybe the collision with that will actually cause it to spin in such a motion like this. So I thought we'd test this a little bit more in hand before we actually move on. I'm just going to throw it at the castle and see if it can do any damage to the actual castle itself. So yeah, it looks like this looks like it could be very dangerous if we can work out how to get it to be controlled. I mean, because that is literally 4 fire sticks and something in the middle going at that speed and that velocity, swinging like that, can just take out whatever is in its way. That's why we don't have to get this tension system working perfectly with a catapult on its side. But just look at that. Look at the swing that gets. And then even sometimes remains intact. You could hook maybe even a rope up to that and recover these sort of things. So this grappling hook is turned into a weapon of mass destruction by the sound of it. Let's see what we got. Let's just slam one right into that wall. Oh, there we go. But it's just matching that sort of velocity with the actual thing. There's just flames coming out of the walls and everything. Let's fire another one. Oh, beautiful. Anyway, let's continue building. So I developed it a little bit further. I found out one of the problems was the contact with the actual flaming torch. I've actually added one of these cannonballs on the edge, and for some strange reason the cannonball looks like it's becoming a molten sort of red colour. I'll show you how far I've come. I've not completely nailed the actual spin yet, but we have got the distance. So as we release that, you can see as we send it over into the trees, taking trees down, whatever it hits. And then obviously due to the game being in early access, it does do some funky stuff, but it's all part of building early access weaponry. Absolute fun of the crazy. I wish the tree set on fire. That would be cool. Maybe in the future. Anyway, let's prep this thing and try to get a bit more of a spin out of it. So the solution I found to making more of a level flight was to weight one of the balls at one of the ends, and this gives us a much more level and sort of frisbee-like effect as it throws, as you can see. And the range is pretty good. Now reloading this thing is quite simple. The only problem is that this platform that it requires is just really probably a bit too large for the actual thing. So we'll move that back a little bit. So you can see all this platform that's actually needed to work this sort of solution. And it's as simple as grabbing another one, dropping it in place, weighting it at the side here. So this is the important bit as well, where you have to weight it on the side where the arm is. So the final test before I retire this concept and try to get back to building a grappling hook, I think we'll try weighting it in the middle and see if that is a solution. I don't think it's going to be, but we may as well try. So we've got a simple spin. No, it's not. We've not got that frisbee sort of effect that we're looking for. You can really get a good frisbee when you're actually just throwing it like this. You see, that's the sort of effect we want. But maybe we just can't get up to that velocity without it causing too much friction against the wooden plank below. I mean, maybe in the future when we've got access to just detach these actual strings and ropes after a certain sort of tension, that might be the solution to throwing things like this at a projectile, because you could make some really accurate and really dangerous sort of things with this. You can see how it just splinters and breaks everything in its path. It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'm going to develop this a little bit further, and I'm going to get back to work on building the grappling hook. And I'll see you next time.